Yo, welcome to Sig Slayers, the comic interview show, period. I'm Mike the Sig Slayer, chilling with Mark the Honorable Villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? We got a talented guest with us. This man is a master in both comics and animation. I grew up on some of his projects. Let him know who we got.
Joining us today, we have comic book creator and multimedia artist, Sean Galloway, joining us. But before we chop it up with Sean, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right. Our next guest, his work can be seen in animations like Spectacular Spider-Man, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and almost every cover of Teen Titans Go. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Land, we bring to you Sean Galloway. What's up, Sean?
Hey guys, how's it going, man?
Man, chilling, man. It's all about you today, man. We're so excited to have you. We're just gonna dive right on in because I'm itching to ask you this question here. Normally, we ask our guests for the first time their comic book origin story, like how they got their first gig in pro comics. But Mark and I were curious because you work in animation and you also work in comics. So we're curious what came first and how you got involved with both.
All right. Yeah, so I got into comics first. So I went to the Navy to try to get the GI Bill, but the GI Bill is so low that I can only get through community college. So then I was kind of stuck, just going to Borders, trying to study off the comics that I couldn't afford. And then later, I got in at 29. I had an ultimatum that at 30 years old, if I didn't make it, I had to go to a different career path choice. I didn't have a backup plan, but luckily I got in at 29. Now I did do some indie work that was published for people that were down in San Diego because my buddy, one of my shipmates, he was out in San Diego downtown and he ran into some indie folks and he told them about me. Now my art was poo-poo. But he knew that I was very determined, because I would stay up late in the birthing area and draw until odd hours of the evening and into the morning. So basically my first stint was to be an inker for this Dark Light Studios from Arnie Gordon and Vince White. So they were down in San Diego. So I was based in San Diego, so that's why I was able to to meet them and get onto inking. So I did that for a while, and then I tried to do inking when I got out of the Navy. I sent in submissions to Marvel, and I was actually having some good communications with the editor that was looking at my portfolio. He would tell me, what wasn't working. He would actually circle the stuff in red and go into details of what I needed to work on. And I was super close. I felt like actually getting in as an inker. And then for some reason we lost communications. I don't know, maybe he, went to a different title perhaps. But anyhow, that kind of gave me the time to reflect, hey, do I really want to continue as inker or still be a penciler, which was my big ambition. And so then that's when I went back to really focusing on drawing. So, so at 29 is when I got my first gig, and that's with Skottie Young. He asked me to be part of Lead Heavy. And so then as I was part of Lead Heavy, he threw me a bone. He gave me an opportunity to be introduced to C.B. Cebulski. And so I did fill in pencils for Venom number 13 for Marvel. So that was a very tough gig because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to match, Francisco Herrera's style or just be me. It wasn't very clear, and I guess I could have asked, but I was kind of nervous to ask too many questions. So I did the book, made the deadline. I had to do, I think, 16 pages in 15 days, and it was very rendered pages. I've never done anything like that in my life, but I did it. But at that point, that's when I was like, do I really want to be a penciler? So after you got the gig, it's like, do I want to do that? And then I focused on more my pinup kind of stuff, and it's still poo-poo quality, but not as poo-poo. But in 2004, so let's see, so that happened in 2003 with Skottie Young and Venom. So in 2004, while I was living downtown San Diego, I was hosting, having people people from DeviantArt. So this was DeviantArt days. Are you guys familiar with DeviantArt, the social,
Yeah.
art platform? Yeah. So that was my first social art community, and big props to my buddy Curtis Glattner, or Curtis Glatter. He's the one that introduced me to that site. So made friends off that community. We stayed over at my pad. I was living above a club, a hip hop club. And so we would just stay up late drawing. And then we'd walk down from my loft and go down to San Diego to attend Comic-Con. We were basically about maybe, I was walking distance at that time. And then one of my roommates at the time, he goes, dude, we met up later in the day at Comic-Con, because we all spread out, do our own thing. And so I met up with him. I was at the DC booth just thinking, okay, should I go talk to an editor? But then my roommate bumped into me over there. He goes, hey, dude. He goes, did you make a DC panel? I said, no, I didn't even know about it. He goes, dude, you got to go. He goes, up there, they'll give you a submission sheet and you put into a portfolio after you listen to the panel. And then if they want you, then they'll reach out to you via the prompter in the DC booth. So I was like, oh man, you know what? They're not going to want to see my work. It's just pinup stuff. He goes, dude, but you're publishing Venom. I said, yeah, but that's dookie. It doesn't look good. I don't. Anytime people ask what's my first, mainstream gig, I say it's that, but I tell them don't go look for it. Otherwise, you might think otherwise about me. I don't know. So anyhow, I went up to the panel, showed up late, and the moderator, he goes, hey guys, look at the guy with the ball cap. Turn around, give him applause for making it. Even though he's disrupting the panel. So I was a little embarrassed. I was sitting in the back, and then so I had some questions. So I raised my hand, asked him a couple of questions, and he's like, hey, look, guys, the guy that was late has a question. So he was making it fun, but it was a little embarrassing, but it was fun. So I had a question about if you're published, but you don't have, any originals back because the inker has it. I didn't want to say what book it was or anything like that, because I just wanted to kind of, I didn't know if it would give me leverage or not. Of course, you do want to say it, but then you don't, because it might be an embarrassment if somebody saw the pages. So I said, if you have the comp copies of a book, can you put the book in there? He goes, if you think it'll help. And I said, okay, cool. So then the next day, well, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. So after the panel, because at each seat they left the form, so picked up the form, filled it out, went downstairs, and I think I was talking to my roommate. I think he was waiting for me about it, and then so he goes, "How did it go?" I said, "I don't know, man. We'll see." So I drew on this manila envelope. It was so bad, the sketches. I don't know what I was thinking. So I drew on it, put in the submission form, put in my pinups and the comp copy of the Venom thing, and then the next day you're supposed to just go to the booth, DC booth, and see if you made it to the next round. And I was nervous. I didn't want to look up. And so then my roommate goes, dude, are you nervous? I said, yeah. I said, so how did it go? He goes, no, I didn't make it. I said, oh, that's a bummer. I felt bad for him, because we're very supportive of each other. And so then another DeviantArt guy, somebody that wasn't staying my pad, he came on DC booth because he also went to one of the panels, and he was looking to see if his name made up there. So both mine and his name made it up there. So my roommate is like, because I was looking down, I was nervous. He goes, dude, look up, you made it. I said, what? So I took a picture of it. It was just so surreal. So the next step was to go up to the one of the rooms at 4:00 in the afternoon or something like that. So I went up there, and who received me at the door? The moderator.
Do you remember who it was? Was it Dan DiDio?
Oh, I do remember who it was, and because he became my editor.
Okay.
Because he gave me my job. He goes, okay. He goes, all the funny stuff aside, he goes, let's go over here. We're going to talk. I said, all right. He goes, look, I go through a lot of portfolios. I said, all right. I was ready for some kind of like, it was good, but not good enough kind of thing, but he goes, went through it all, about to, basically give up by the end of the stack. But then yours was one of the last in the stack. And he goes, I gotta tell you, it was a breath of fresh air. I was like, whoa, and like I said, it was garbage. The sketches that I drew on there, because I didn't ballpoint pen, I didn't do pre-sketch, I just went for it. So this Wonder Woman that I drew was just so ugly, I couldn't redeem myself, and I couldn't afford another manila envelope, so it was like a Hail Mary, right? So I said, I'm surprised you even opened up because of sketches, basically. And, he's laughing. He goes, well, we won't talk about those. Now, I don't know word for word what was said at that moment, but I can only imagine, if I remember it correctly. But I do remember him saying that it was a breath of fresh air. And he goes, I want you to explain your pinups. I said, oh, okay. Because he wasn't really feeling the Venom stuff, and I knew he wouldn't, because he could tell I was trying to ape, somebody else, right? That wasn't being me. He saw that I already was having my own kind of house style, even though it wasn't fantastic style. He could tell that here's my identity over here. Here's me trying not to be somebody over here. So he was only focusing on my pinups. And he goes, I want you to explain this piece right here. This piece where it's a back shot of Spider-Man crouched down low, and you got Venom, further off in the midground. So he goes, I want you to explain. He goes, I have my ideas why you did this, but I want you to explain why you put these two bars right here, where I broke it up like as a panel instead of just straight up pinup. So it was one solid, solid image, but I put two panels just to kind of break it up. So he goes, why'd you do that? And I said, well, I wanted to kind of slow people down in case they didn't understand Spider-Man and Venom's relationship, which is Venom and Spider-Man, they don't trigger each other's spidey sense, right? Because of the symbiote and stuff like that. It just, for some reason, that was the rule back in the day. They don't trigger each other's spider sense, right? So in the first panel, I had Spider-Man's hand, and like this, while Spider-Man was looking at Venom, I had Venom's tendril symbiote stuff going around, not touching his wrist, but about to go around it. So it didn't trigger Spider-Man's spidey sense, but then Venom, being the alpha in this shot, knew that Spider-Man was behind him, kind of thing. So I told him why I broke it down like that. And it's basically, the title was called Who's Got the Drop on Who. So Spider-Man thought he had the drop on him, but actually it was Venom that had the drop on Spidey. And so he goes, that's exactly why I'm going to hire you today to do covers for Teen Titans Go. I said, what? So I did 23 covers, almost 2 years worth of covers. Right. After I did the covers, and I was really surprised I got to stay on so long because, man, I could not be on model. I don't have an animation background, so I didn't know how to do volumes. I was really bad at staying on model, but yet he let me still stay on. He fought for me, to stay on. Now, I didn't know that they were trying to, get rid of me or anything like that. I just know that he was really fighting for, I guess, as bad as I thought it was, that he allowed it on the book. So whatever fights he had to fight, I'm assuming because of how bad it looked. I'm putting that together because later when I got into animation, I heard some of the Warner Brothers crew from Teen Titans were dissing my covers. They couldn't believe how terrible it was, and now still in the book. So I can only assume that he had to really fight those fights, because if you look back, I was not on model. I was very flat with my forms, and the guys at Warner Brothers, no hard feelings. They had every validation because they worked hard to design those characters. And who's this guy that didn't really know how to, draw outside of his comfort zone on these covers, right? So my boss had put it this way. He goes, look, this is a multi-million-dollar franchise. He goes, if So this is when he told me in the beginning, if there's feedback, we need to apply it, kind of thing. So I was really surprised I wasn't forced to be more on model. I tried to, but I didn't neglect the IP, because I was a big fan of the cartoon. I just wasn't built to be on model. And, during the Teen Titans, at the tail end of it, I got an email from Tad Stones, the creator of Darkwing Duck.
I had a question about that because we were IMDbing the Hellboy movies, both of them, and you're a part of them. And we noticed that there's a character designer from the art department and then character designer from the animation department. Your name was listed under the animation department. We were kind of confused as to what's the difference between the two. Could you explain, like, it had art department, character design had a couple people, and then it had animation, character designer. So what did you have to do then?
I was the lead character designer. So that was my title. So I designed the cartoon. So that was my title going in. But because of my lack of knowledge of what to do, now I believe they might have not honored that in the end. I think they just called me character designer, but going in, my title was lead character designer. But going into the project, I was very honest, about my portfolio. I said I didn't know how to do turnarounds because, like I said, I didn't go to school for this kind of stuff. Up until that point, you didn't see me drawing a character more than once because I didn't know how to be on model, even with my own style. So that's how bad it was for me at the time of my mentality. I just didn't know how to do it, and there weren't people at the time that broke it down to show me how, because production is just so fast. So at the end, I guess I was more of the lead concept guy, for the cartoon, where I provided the style of the look. But then you had guys like AJ that knew animation like the back of his hand, that still had the struggles of taking my flat design and trying to make it look more of how can it rotate in a 2D space, right, as looking like a 3D thing. So I felt bad for the guy because I wish I could have been more help. I just didn't know how to do it. But so he would show me, after he did the turns, he goes, "Does this look like how you would do it?" I'm like, I said, "I think." I didn't know. So I was more of like a lead concept guy at that time. I didn't enjoy my experience there. I felt like there might have been some egos that I just couldn't gel with.
And this is over the course of both of the movies, or just the first?
Well, yeah, it's been so long ago. I can't even tell if I did one and then went to the other, or I was doing both at the same time. I really couldn't tell you. It's just I was so inexperienced. So finally, I just stayed in San Diego and sent it in over email.
What about Mike Mignola? Was he involved any at all during your phase of the production?
So he was very hands off, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I did miss a big step of the approval process of me getting the job, right? So during the test, I guess there were some that were not looking like his stuff, some that was looking like his stuff, and then there was stuff that was just looking so cuckoo, which mine was. It didn't even look like really his Hellboy or anything like that. And I turned in actual colored, colored finals. So when they're looking through it, he goes, "That's why I want to design the show." So he pointed to my stuff. Now, I wasn't there in the meeting. That's just how it was relayed to me. Now, I already knew I wasn't the pick from other people that was, I guess, making the choice. But Mike, from what I heard, he doesn't like it when people try to ape his stuff, just from what I heard. Now, I haven't heard it from him per se. It's just what I've heard. So I'm assuming that maybe that's why I got the job, right? So once I got picked for the job, the next step was to have a meeting at his house. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm sitting in his house because I'm such a big fan of his work, right? So then I rang the doorbell. I hear. So then he opens the door. He goes, "Hey, Sean," and it was Mike Mignola opening the door. He goes, "Hey, man, come on in." So had a meeting with him and Tad in his house. He showed me around his house, and then so it was a very nice meeting. He was very for me having the job. So the next step was to go in house down at Film Roman. When I first got to the building, they said, "Okay, now that you've gotten the job, we need to establish a look for Hellboy." I said, "All right." So as I was doing it, I was being funneled to go more towards Mike's Hellboy look, and then so then after a week of doing that, Mike saw, the week's worth production, and he's like, "Oh man, what's up with Sean's stuff?" He goes, "This doesn't look like the Sean that we hired." And he was right, because Tad is even more of a huge fan of Hellboy, and if he could have it, I guarantee he would want it exactly like Mike's. And who wouldn't? That's the ideal Hellboy. So, but Mike's like, "This is not why we hired Sean. I don't want him aping me." He said, "Tad, take the reins off, give Sean some bullet points of what to hit, and then let him go home on the weekend, and then have him come back with a new approach." And that's when I drew the one where he's on that ledge, barrel chested, gun in the air, big old, right-handed doom, or right-handed, fist of doom, right-handed doom.
Yeah, right-handed doom.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, right-handed doom. Oh man, it's been so long since I talked about this, but yeah. So he goes, "That is Hellboy," and then Tad goes, "Okay," and that's what we started basing it around, and that's what the toys were based around. And then we had Greg Guler in there, and although I did some initial sketches of Abe Sapien, he really owned in on the aesthetics that I probably would have drawn, but because he's such a seasoned designer, man, I give him that credit. Like, he is the one that made Ape Sapien look phenomenal. But and then AJ and the other character designers really made Hellboy look phenomenal. Although I gave the initial sketch, it was their aesthetics that really put the cherry on top. Now, fast forwarding to the last day, you got to do your exit exam kind of thing. So I had to be there in office. He dug into me, and I'm glad he did. He's like, "Look," he goes, "I'm gonna be honest with you. You let us down." I said, "Oh," I said, "I let y'all down," because I didn't think I'd let them down. I just knew my skill set was limited because they see my portfolio on DeviantArt, and I was very open about. I didn't know how to do turnarounds. I didn't know how to be on the model, and so I was very honest about that kind of stuff up in the front. He goes, "We expected you to be in the office every day." And I explained to him that the morale level for me wasn't there where I felt happy, that I needed to be back at home, around stuff that made me happy, so that I wouldn't be inside my own head and not be able to produce stuff for you guys. He goes, "Okay, but that's not usually how it works." I said, "I get it." I said, "But if I was a seasoned designer and I didn't hear some of the stuff that I heard, I would have stayed in the office. That would have been no problem." I said, "But hopefully you can understand my point of view." He goes, "We expected turnarounds from you, expression sheets." I'm like, "But Tad, we talked about this in the beginning. I didn't know how to do that stuff." I said, "If I knew, then yes, I can understand I would have let you down." And then he goes, and I said, "I did come to you for advice." I said, "There was a time that I mean, at that point, man, I could not draw an attractive lady at all. My women were very lackluster, let's just say, looking attractive. So I did go in his office during production. I said, "Hey, Tad, I'm having a hard time drawing this villain. What could I do to make her look more attractive?" And and he's from Disney, so thinking, oh man, he's just going to blow me out of the water, show me skills. So he was trying to do it, and even he was getting frustrated at that point, with his post-it notes on top of it. He's like, he threw down his pencil. He's like, man, it's like the blind leading the blind. I was like, oh. So on the last day, when he gave me the exam, he goes, "Look, if you want to stay in animation," this is after he dug into me, and after I had to, kind of state my case of, this is what you hired. He goes, "We expect you to draw girls, monsters, animals." I said, "Tad," I said, "did my portfolio have it? Did you see any of that kind of stuff on my DeviantArt portfolio?" He goes, and I said, "Then you can't expect me to be able to draw that." I said, "I didn't lie that I could draw it." I said, "My portfolio is my portfolio," and then, so then he laid off, from that. And then he's like, "Look, if you want to stay in animation, you're going to have to learn to do these things." But, because he said those things, at the end, at the exit, exit interview, I believe it's not exit exam, exit interview. That's when I was like, okay, those are things I want to work on, So for several months, I worked on that. I worked on those things. And we're still friends to this day, because you got to have a person that's going to be honest with you. And I think if I had a thicker skin at the time on production, I probably could have stayed in-house and maybe even learned more if I could have just toughened up a bit more. But because I didn't have the skill set, I just wasn't ready to hear that kind of, trash talk.
Sean, tell us about your involvement with Spectacular Spider-Man. How does the lead character designer role fit into production?
So after Boondocks, I got an email from Vic Cook. So Vic Cook, also one of the big guys that worked on the Disney Afternoon stuff that we loved. He reached out to me in an email, and he's like, "Hey, we loved what you did on Hellboy Animated." I didn't even know he was part of Hellboy Animated. So he directed or co-directed the other movie because by the time I was done, he came in to work on the next movie, right? So the next animated movie. So I was like, oh my God. I said, please. I said, I'm sorry for whatever you heard. He goes, "No, dude." He goes, "We loved what you did." I said, "Oh man." I said, my skill set was so bad. So he goes, "Look," he goes, "I already know. You told Tad that you weren't an animation guy, but yeah, you came in, you delivered what you could." I said, "Whoa, this was a different kind of response that I was expecting, which was a very positive response." And like I said, Tad wasn't a bad guy. He was just, tell me how it is. He's a very just, I'll tell you how it is kind of guy. And Vic, basically said, "Look, we knew that when you came in that we hired you for your style, not because you're a animation, student or a vet or anything like that. We knew exactly we wanted your aesthetics." He goes, "Now, let me ask you, have you learned more than just aesthetics, since Hellboy Animated?" And I said, I'm kind of can do a turnaround now. I think I'm getting comfortable with my style. He goes, "Okay, now, if you can't do turnarounds yet, that's not a problem." He goes, "You can later learn that on production." I said, "Whoa."
All right, you mentioned turnaround a bunch. What is a turnaround?
So a turnaround is when I provide a concept, whether it's a 3/4 view or a straight-on view, or maybe a character in a pose that's more of, this is the look of the character now, right? So that's the concept that starts it off. And then the turnaround, after it gets after the concept gets approved, then we move to the next step, which is the turnaround, right? So you got to get the 3/4 view approved at that point if you didn't draw it as a 3/4 view. And then so once the 3/4 view gets approved, Then you move into the turnaround, which is the front view, the 3/4 back view, or what you call a 7/8, some people might call it, and then a profile, and then a back view. So you're getting multiple views of that same character, right? And usually you don't move the pose, you keep them in a neutral pose so that it's easier to read. Whereas in anime, their turnarounds, the character's arms and leg positions are moved around. They're just that skilled, with doing their turnarounds. Even with animated features, because they're just more skilled. And basically, they have more time in production to explore those things, where in TV, your timeline is a lot shorter. You have to move at a faster pace. So that's what a turnaround is. So I said, okay, then this gave me a bit more hope that if I do take this job, that if I can't do turnaround, I can still be the lead character designer. It won't get stripped from me. I won't be embarrassed after the fact that I was introduced as the lead, but yet I'm not the lead anymore at that point, So I had those talks with him. He goes, no, you'll be the lead. We will hire guys to do the turnaround specifically based on your designs. And then at any point you can learn from those guys. I was like, wow, that was awesome to hear. So then I took the test. So much amazing names were in the hat for the test. They did a fantastic job. And then I was able to get the job at the end of the day, after, several rounds of approvals and stuff like that. So lead character designer, basically my duty is to establish the look of the show. So even though I passed the test to get the job, now I have to create the look of the show, right? So my test was actually almost there. It just needed to be finessed here and there. So what really did it was my J. Jonah Jameson that was in that lineup of my test. Like, that is Spectacular Spider-Man. I said, okay, great. Now I had to figure out how to design Spider-Man and the supporting characters to be in that universe with J. Jonah. And but yeah, so that was the task I had to do as the lead character designer.
So Sean, we interviewed Greg Weisman a few weeks back last year. Can you tell us what it was like working with such an animation giant on that show, Spectacular Spider-Man?
Yeah, man. It blew my mind because creator Gargoyles, hit TV series, coming into this, and that was the thing when I got into Hellboy and this, that was my reality check of how big of these icons are that you potentially are going to be working for. And I was just very blessed to work with big icons in both productions. So because of the saying, you don't meet your heroes kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was kind of hesitant, didn't know what to think, but it wasn't like that at all. It's like he welcomed me into the office. He goes, Cheeks, come on in, so we would talk. You could tell he was such a big fan of Spider-Man. Other production people, writers would walk past and he would introduce me to them. It was just very, very cool family to be a part of, to know that there is a different side to animation. The other part of being a lead character designer too was making sure that I go around and making sure that the model sheets were looking like the model sheets were the turnarounds, make sure that that's how it would look like if I were to do it, if I knew how to do it. But at that time, I didn't know how my style would look in space. I just didn't know how to do it from scratch, unfortunately. But later, I did learn that on production because Vic Cook took the time. He goes, dude, you're overthinking it. And he showed me how to break the 3/4 view down and still make it look like it was on model through different views. but yeah, so going back to Greg Weisman, it was just amazing. And the other crew were just big fans of Spider-Man. They didn't want to leave, characters out. They didn't want to recreate the lore. They would just want to basically, give other characters that didn't have life in other animations or in the comics that much more life in our show. And it was just, it's just it's just amazing. So invited him, Vic, to my wedding, so we're like family. It's just amazing. We still get Christmas cards from Greg and Vic and text, and we just did a get together for a Spidey get together. So it was just so surreal, and it really made me feel good that you can meet your hero and have a positive experience out of it. Yeah.
We want to ask about your relationship with Teen Titans. You did a story with Eddie Berganza for Wednesday Comics, a newspaper print style comic strip.
Yes.
How did you plan the layouts for comic strip storytelling, and would you ever return to that format again?
So that is one of the projects I wish I had less conventions in between those deadlines, because that was such an amazing project. Mark Chiarella reached out to me, and he's like, and that's the thing. Like I said, he was the moderator that gave me the hard time in the first panel, and we became really good buddies throughout the years. He'll still come to my table, we'll chat it up. It's amazing to see that he's doing covers for Marvel, and I think Boom Studios as well, and or Dynamite. So it's great to see that he's getting out there being his artsy self, but yeah, so it was so surreal. So Mark reached out to me, told him about the project, and he said, and he really said, Sean, I want you to take advantage of drawing these traditionally, at the scale that it's supposed to be. But my lack of knowledge of how big those Sunday funnies, I mean, I knew technically how big it was, and I could have easily, probably gone online, but my lack of knowledge of doing that kind of research online at that time was whack. But I did draw them 11 by 17. I would take like a top row of the panels, or I'll break off some of the panels, and I'll draw it on 11 by 17 paper, because I want to really get in there and really feel it out. But yeah, and then I'll scan it in and then resize it into thing. I really wish I had the cojones at that time to really do the layout, quick layout I won't say quick, the initial layout with sketch first, because I do that nowadays. I'll do, depending on deadline and how tight deadline is, because when you do it on paper, man, it comes quicker. You're not thinking, Alt Z, go back in history, turn off this layer, lower the layer, because at that point you're micromanaging your page, right? Whereas that's overthinking. Whereas when you do it with a pen and a ballpoint pen and paper, it's like boom, get to the thought. Wow, it only took me 30 minutes to draw 5 variations of this layout. Now, I wish I had that mindset when I did the Wednesday Comics. There was times I believe I delivered my page maybe a couple days late because of that, and I had to realize that, man, I could potentially lose this job, and I think Mark might even said, dude, don't mess up this opportunity, kind of thing like that, and because of a couple times, and I've never really turned in stuff late before, and that was my first time, and it was a reality check, like, don't screw this up, because not only will I mess up this project, I could mess up my relationship with Mark. And then so I made it, and I really was pushing hard on some of my angles. But even there was times where I had to actually reach out to Andy Kuhn. I'm like, man, I'm like really struggling with layouts because I haven't really had a lot of sequential work at that time. So I reached out to Andy Kuhn to help me out with some of the some thumbnail layouts, so I can kind of use that as inspiration if need be, or use it if I'm in a pinch. And I could not have gone through if I did not have Andy Kuhn in my corner for that. So sometimes, sometimes some artists will use a breakdown artist and somebody do finishes because the deadline is tight. But because there were so many characters too, that you kind of for this project, that I was front loading, putting all my thought process in the front. So I was doing my layouts for that. But then there were some pages that I had to play catch up to that I was like, Andy, can you please help me out? Do some layouts here. And then, but yeah, so if I could go back and do it, yes, I definitely would. And my experience working with Eddie was awesome. We did a signing for that. I kept the placard that was at Comic-Con. I was able to color the stuff, and I think that's what put me behind too. So not behind, but that's what was eating up a lot of my time for layout. So I had to color this stuff. So I was trying to figure things out for colors. But looking back at the other guys, the other people that contributed to it, I'm like, oh my God, their stuff was so phenomenal. I wish they would have sent us those to look at, because I would have been like, shoot, okay, I'd better up my game. But at that time, I was still learning my style, because that was still early 2000s. So I was still figuring myself out. But my angles were getting figured out. My staging was getting better, getting figured out at that time. But yeah, that is one project. That and Batman Black and White, I would have loved to go back and redo.
So this is our last question, man. It's been great, Sean. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about? Any upcoming projects, appearances, anything of that nature?
Yeah, so super proud of my Table Taffy label. Are you guys familiar with my Table Taffy stuff?
No, expound, yeah.
Yeah, so basically Table Taffy is my production company. And from what I learned from animation and comics, is like, you can't do it all yourself. I mean, you can if you're just super fast, right? But I knew from my experiences that it was fun for me to work with other people, right? So, so with my Table Taffy comics, I would focus on the layouts, and then I hired somebody to come in, work on layouts, but then I would hire somebody to draw the finishing touches in my style. But then I was able to hire people that could just take it from scratch all the way to finish. So I put out my own IPs called Shadow Pirates, Bastion 7, Gumshoes for Hire, Little Big Head. So I was able to put out and self-publish those books, which is nice. And then it got picked up by Webtoons, my Shadow Pirates. So that came out as a original graphic novel, like an 80-page graphic novel. So that'll be in print later. And then, got to hire my own writers and stuff like that. So other stuff I've been working on, Marvel Snap cards, the covers for Marvel recently for the past 2.5 years. Been working on the Saturday morning variants for them. So still doing that kind of stuff. And then just turned in another cover for Marvel that's not a Saturday morning variant. So hopefully I'll be able to announce that one once the news hits.
Awesome. What about any appearances? Any what's your next show?
So next appearance will be WonderCon coming up. Was that the end of March?
In March, yep. You'll see Mark there. Sean, thank you so much for joining us. This was great, man. Getting all of that background history, especially in your animation career. Just know you always have a home here on the Sig Slayers station, brother. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Sig Slayers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and Sean Galloway. We are out.
All right,
Peace.
Sig Slayers.